All right. So, welcome to today's Slow Mastermind session around insider entrepreneur. And today we have with us Mohammed Reda, who is an impact investor and entrepreneur based in Hong Kong. And he's joining us today. So, Mohammed, welcome to our space.
Thank you.
We're so happy to have you. And I think what we'll do is just get right into it. And we'd love to hear about your story and your journey and how it all started for you.
Thanks for inviting me here, and it's a pleasure. Um, I mean, I had I grew up in Kuwait. That's where I'm from. My parents are there, but I've been living in Hong Kong for over 10 years. And I guess in terms of like what's relevant for kind of this talk is, as a kid, I was always like that guy who would, try to sell like stuff from, the supermarket to like my cousins or whatever. We have this like holiday where, similar to the Chinese, like we give money during Christmas and like those holidays instead of like gifts. So all the kids would always get money, and then, it's set up like this, like selling candy and gum and whatever. And then even, did a few things like that in high school, or like sell, just like drink out of the trunk of our car, or have my sisters like sell it for me in like whatever grade. So I've always like been interested in like businesses and entrepreneurship in general. And then I kind of got into like investing and buying stocks. And I went to the like stock exchange one day, and like my dad and my uncle like explained to me like what a stock is and just like the basics. And so at an early age, I took like all the money that I had and like just started doing that. And pretty much, in college, I was like, okay, let me study finance. Let me go. I got a scholarship to like study finance in the US. I was like, let me learn how this works. But at the same time, I kind of wanted to chart my own course. And so I also started an online, basically like calling plan service called mukalamat.com. In like 2002, 2003. I didn't know there was like a tech bust, at the time. I didn't realize like that stuff was going on. I was just in college. So I was doing that, while I was in college, and then basically came back to Kuwait, started also a job, but also a side business as well. We're doing this like basically like green energy like film that we put on like buildings and cars and stuff. And then I got interested in Asia. So I was like, I found this like firm that was investing in Asia. I was like, this is an interesting place, let me go check it out. 10 years I'll go there, figure out how this market works and what's going on, and then maybe I'll learn something in those 10 years and come back and maybe apply it to my like home country. So I've been there ever since. I first went there in 2007, but I moved there in 2012. I met, Farah through some mutual, contacts. And I run my own like investment firm, based in Hong Kong. And we've invested in like, I used to cover the consumer sector. So I've invested in a lot of consumer companies, a lot in retail, actually. We had like one private investment based out of Hong Kong, Grana. I don't know if you remember that, Farah, but
Of course.
yeah. And then like a bunch of other ones that are like across Asia. So yeah, that's kind of like my journey in a kind of a nutshell.
Nice. Yeah, I remember all the talks we used to have in Hong Kong around business and life and the likes. That was super
Yeah.
beautiful. But thank you for that. And I'm always intrigued when you tell me about how you interact with over 400 entrepreneurs each year. What can you tell us about what sets successful entrepreneurs apart from the rest? What is it about the ones that you really feel have that spark that stands out for them?
Yeah. So, I mean, we basically speak to, thousands of companies a year, or like at least look through their data. And, every quarter we're kind of talking to, the CEOs, CFOs of these companies, trying to figure out like what they're doing. And because we're longer term investors, we care like how they're building the business, how they gain a competitive advantage. That's really important to define like what the competitive advantage that you have is, and why you're like going to do something better than your competitor. And so I think the thing that stands out the most is most of them in Asia, like if you think about it, the whole region has gone through like a few crises, right? Like for example, the last one in 97, a lot of companies like had a lot of debt or went under, family businesses that had been built up for many, many years had to like figure out how to survive. And so I think the key is like ability to change when confronted with like new information, or like, a struggle or a setback doesn't like cripple them in a way that like it would other people. So, either physically or mentally. So for example, like we know companies that have been, had like significant debt and great market share, great product in, for example, Indonesia, and it took the entrepreneur 10 years to pay off all the debt. Like that's a long, long time to stick to it, pay off the debt, continue to grow the business, and have a very long-term vision. It's not easy to work for the bank for 10 years. It's actually like a very difficult mentally to do that, right? So I think like that's like definitely key. And I think the other thing is like they build a good team around them, and they're able to like delegate well to that team. So building a team around that kind of mission, and they share the wealth as well. So I think like that becomes like really important. And then I'm sure a lot of them just had like good personal habits. They're just like, at least we gravitate towards like they're just like good people. And I think that kind of shows. I don't know. I think it shows up even if you look at financial stuff, information, it'll show up somewhere.
Interesting. So perseverance, a good team, and good habits that serve you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. It's always interesting to not fall off the wagon when so much is coming against you and you feel like giving up. But I recently saw like a statogram that says the people that meet the most success are usually the ones that are last standing, who haven't given up when things hit the fan, who haven't
Yeah.
walked off when things go the other way. And I think Opie and I were talking recently about when your overwhelming tasks get overwhelming, how do you start creating that team and delegating outwards? You can have more peace as an entrepreneur to focus on the bigger mission and bigger strategy. So it's good to have an extra confirmation of that.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting topic. I think also like knowing when to quit is like another important, like it's very hard because the grit versus quit like dilemma. But yeah, I agree. Like you got to figure out like when to stop doing something that isn't working, and when to like double down on something that is, and kind of to know the difference. Like I think we can like definitely talk about that in a bit as we go through some of the other topics, but I think that's definitely like an important thing to remember.
Yeah, I like that quit versus the grid. I think many of us would love to know, when do you quit versus when do you keep going? Maybe that could replace the next question I had for you. That sounds a lot more intriguing.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Like, um, I like. There's actually a book that I'm reading on this. A woman called Annie Duke. She's like a poker player, but she focuses on like decision making under uncertainty. So, she's a great like person to kind of follow and read about. And I mean, I think like it's like you'll always get a feedback loop somehow, right? So if you're selling a product, you want to create a feedback loop into your life, right?
Yeah.
So you want to be able to be told by someone that something is working, and be able to like take that feedback and then iterate on it and see like the next iteration. I think the challenge is like when some things have very, very long feedbacks, like how do you create awareness around that? And so I think there's a lot of other softer skills you can develop, like things like meditation or awareness. Most of the time, I mean, it's like a kind of interesting dilemma, because an entrepreneur will have their identity very closely linked to their business, because they're creating something that's hopefully they're passionate about. And then, if their identity is only linked to that business, it actually becomes very, very difficult to let go of it if it's not working, because it's like you're not separating your identity from the business. And I think that creates a struggle, because you're less willing to let it go and change course than you would be otherwise. So I think then it's like, okay, I have to practice awareness and mindfulness to actually know, okay, why am I making this decision? What is the feedback that I'm getting that's, you know, helping me decide? So I think also those things become really important.
Yeah.
Uh,
Looking at it from a distance rather than something.
whether it's internal or external.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you can get like the same way, you know, it's easier for somebody else to look at you and give you feedback, you know, creating, you know, a group of people around you that are going through the same thing. Like I got that advice when I was starting my fund. People said, you know, speak to somebody who's in the same position as you, and just, you know, make sure you're kind of getting feedback from there. You know, we also get feedback from like the market on how things are doing. So yeah, awareness, feedback loops, internal, external. I think those are like all important.
Yeah, completely. Interesting. Okay, so Mohammed, amongst our many talks, you once mentioned that in order to, or one way of reaching your success is define your values and define your financial goals, and then reach your financial goals without compromising your values. Can you elaborate more a little bit about that approach and what it means?
Um, yeah. So actually, you know, when I was younger, like people think of the Middle East as a place that has like money, and you know, so a lot of like bankers or people come like ask for money and leave, and it was always like very strange to me that there was no like homegrown, um, you know, like for example in Norway, like, you know, they have an oil industry, but they have a very active, let's say, you know, investment arm that helps like, you know, channel those investments and maybe technologies that are going to help create a cleaner future, et cetera, right? So I didn't think that we had that, and then as I started like asking and looking, you know, there was every single large financial firm had like some ethics scandal, somehow, somewhere, right? Because you know, when you're like, you know, dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars, people are always enticed to cheat or to do something, you know, that's unethical, or to cut a corner, or to not think of something as ethically wrong because tribally it might be accepted or culturally it might be accepted, so that like some people might not understand what real corruption means, or, you know, definitions of these things. And so it was very strange for me that I couldn't find a single example of that. So, you know, when I started my business, you know, I took it to heart that like ethics has to be the core of like what we do. It's the core of trust. And, you know, it didn't matter if I became crazy like wealthy versus if people knew that we were being honest with their money, and they could trust us to do the right thing. And then we never like, you know, show up on you know, in front of a newspaper like doing anything like illegal. So that was like really important to me. So I think like defining that value and then saying, you know, you don't have to get involved in every investment, or, you know, even if you know something's going to make money, you know, saying no to that becomes difficult, right? Because everybody else, if they're engaging that behavior, it becomes difficult to stay out of that like circle. So for me, that was important. And I think the other component is like, so ethics is like a big one. And then sharing the wealth with the others. Like, I think that's, you know, like there was something that resonated with me early on, which was, you know, it's better to own 10% of $1 billion company than 100% of a $10 million company. And again, that goes back to like, do you value control, or do you want to create something big? Do you want to work with other people? Do you want to have a hobby or a business? Like, these are all things that, you know, kind of questions important to ask. And there's a great like quote, these like Kenyan runners, they say like, if you want to run fast, you run alone, and if you want to run far, you run together.
True.
So I like that one. Yeah.
It's a lot of integrity and patience.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what would you say? Would you say that's the biggest factor that has helped you be successful, or would you attribute your success to another factor?
Um, I don't know if it like helps me become successful. I think it just helps like guide your decision making, like when you're confronted with situations, you know. I think it just helps you say, okay, like I'm just not going to do this. But I think for sure, like other people that have helped me along the way, 100%, like, key success to my to where I am today. You know, giving guidance, people teaching me how to learn how to listen to my own kind of inner voice, and all these things, like those are hugely valuable. And realizing that like mental and emotional like state is more important than just an output. It's especially over the long run. Like these things, I think people underestimate, especially as you said, like you can get bombarded with stuff, and it's usually those factors that I think really define the difference between good and amazing. It's like you can still do well, but it won't be like at that upper level. And I don't know if I'm like successful, like, because I don't know what, if that's like where's that place, like how do you define, like success is very like a loose, weird word. But I think the thing that I try to focus on is like think big, start small and never stop. Like that's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah, yeah, I love that, and it's a very applicable advice as well. We can use that in different ways. Yeah. And what about from your experience as well, and interacting with so many entrepreneurs and businesses over the past years? What do you believe usually sets entrepreneurs back from reaching their goals and reaching the success they strive for? There are so many that start then stop, and then there's some that make it and they
Yeah.
do it pretty well. So what's happening there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure like there's a lot of specific situations that of different examples, but I don't know. I think there's a couple. Like I think if I went through kind of a list of things, I think one is like limiting beliefs.
Yeah, definitely.
Is a big one. If you have, I don't know if you guys have like come across like Carol Dweck's work on growth mindset versus fixed mindset.
Yeah.
But basically, like it's like somebody is like not good at math, and then they look at like complex problem, and then they say, oh, I'm not good at math, and that's it, and they stop like trying. Whereas like a growth mindset person is like, okay, I can't solve it yet, and so that attitude, I think, actually changes like a problem to a situation, and situations are kind of easier to find solutions for than like a problem which is like just feels like you're stuck. So I think like mindset is like really important. And then I think the other thing is like not being able to separate the signal versus the noise. I think there's like, especially in today's age, there's so much information, and focusing on what really matters and not having like FOMO on like products or things like that. It's like, actually, I think it's like very challenging for people to do. Like what should you stop doing? I think a lot of people not willing to do like 1 to 2 things very well. They want to kind of try a few things, see what works, and that's good. I think like it's always great to have like there's like bullets in the chamber of like things you want to experiment with. But there's so like the other day I was going to eat at this like restaurant that has like a shawarma thing, and actually they only sell like first time there, it's like a big hit, like everybody eats there. So I went there, and we're ordering, and the guy's like spicy or regular, and I'm like, what? I'm like, you don't have like, where's the menu? He's like, that's the menu. It's like beef shawarma, spicy or regular, and that's it. Like literally, they're like, they have nothing else. No change of bread, no like nothing. And so for a lot of, and like I think they have like fries and okay, Coke and like water or whatever. But for a lot of people, like I think it would be very difficult to expect to do like one thing. In a very competitive, like where there's like multiple options, right? Because you can have this and put it with dressing and customize, and they just went the other way, and it's a huge success, right? So learning what you like, just being able to focus and drop things. I think we talked about like that whole like not being self-aware, not being able to let things go quickly, change course. I think that's another one. I think financially, compounding is, I think, very misunderstood. The 1% improvement every day, like kind of mantra, but also like using kind of just companies that grow over time. And so I'll give you like guys an example. If you had a bottle, okay, and I said that the bottle would be full after 1 hour, okay, and that every minute, whatever material, sand, whatever is in the bottle would double every minute, okay, so double every minute, and then after a full hour, it would be completely full. At what minute would it be half empty or half full?
I'll leave this to them.
Any answers or any guesses?
At half a minute, right? See if it's going to fill up double at a minute.
Well, yeah, you're close. So actually at the minute 59, it would be half full, right? Because at 1 minute later, it would then double again and fill the bottle, right? So it starts off like very small. And so if it doubles every minute, the last minute before it finishes, it would have been half full, and it doubles, and then so it becomes full. So, you know, that's really like, there's multiple examples of this. Like there's the chessboard and the king, like you can look this up, but the power of compounding is really, really important. And so the key to take advantage of that is to give yourself enough runway. You know, time is a big factor that affects these things. Even if we looked up like Warren Buffett's wealth, I don't think people realize that, you know, last 10 years, you know, he made more wealth than the previous, like, you know, 80 years. You know, there are more people alive today than there were ever born, you know, in the existence of humankind. There's a lot of like these, you know, things called compounding that actually become really important. So long runway for growth. So you want to pick a big market where you have like a long time to compound and keep doing it. And that actually gives you this curve that's exponential. And I think this is very underappreciated by a lot of people. And then I think just luck, you know, you know, like we can't control everything. So I think people just sometimes just unlucky.
I love this. I love this information and insight around compounding. We'd have to bring you back for a special workshop just around that, so we can learn a little bit more around that.
Yeah.
But okay, so so let's say you were advised us to make 3 changes today that would help us get closer to our successes. What would those be?
I think I'd spend some time to articulate like your goals and values. I think a lot of people kind of like put words and things and they don't really spend time like defining them like very clearly. And so I think like, and then having a friend or a professional like refine them, you know, with you is extremely important. And so getting that feedback, like, so articulating, you know, things like while getting a lot of feedback on it, I think that's like a huge thing. I've had to do it actually like multiple times in my business. When I first started, like I'd write something down that I wanted to do. And then a few years later, I realized, okay, it doesn't really make sense, or I didn't really, you know what I was saying or talking about at that point. Or like I really didn't like doing that, and it, you know, it doesn't fit with my personality. I thought it was something and it turned out to be something different. So I think articulating your thoughts and goals is really important. I think finding time in your day for stillness is really important. Stillness and reflection, exercise. I write like a personal like journal, put down my thoughts, and a work journal very regularly. And I find that that's extremely like, you know, important for me. And I think 3 is like, for an entrepreneur, you want to be able to celebrate your small wins.
Yeah,
you know, I think you can easily kind of, again, if you're thinking about like, you know, marathon running, like you need to be able to have the stamina to keep going. And if you don't celebrate these small wins, you can, it's tough. It can be tough to continue, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. And it's such a what's next culture. It's always like what's next, what's next, what's next, that you stop to really digest all that you've put in and all that you need to celebrate in this moment, which can create a lot of stress and overwhelming feelings as well.
Yeah, and I think like ultimately, even for me, like I have like two guiding principles in my day. What am I trying to do? I'm trying to make more good decisions than bad decisions. That's kind of like goal number one. And then try to have as many of those days as possible, like stuck together, right?
Yeah.
And so I think like I want to simplify it so that I don't get overwhelmed by like these other factors, and then every day is like it's like a reset, and then we just see what needs to be done.
I like that as a North Star, that every day you strive to make more good decisions versus bad decisions. And that's how you spend your time, your nutrition, what you choose to think about, and what you choose to focus on as well.
Yeah. I think otherwise it can get complicated, right?
Yeah. And then, like you said, you end up just saying, let's start tomorrow, and then tomorrow never comes. In that sense. Yep. All right. So I know that you're in the midst of travel, so we have about 10 more minutes left, and then I would love to just open the mic to have the participants ask you some questions. So let's get into your personal orbit. What would you say are your own success habits? You mentioned that you journal and that you make time for stillness, and that you articulate your goals and your values. But are there any success habits that you practice on the daily?
Yeah, I mean, so one that I started in like 2016, like small, but I had a goal of like I would only add 1 to 2 habits a year.
Nice.
And I think a lot of like for me, I it was very challenging to accept this idea, like to only add 1 or 2 things. I thought it was like too little. I was like, oh, how could I do so little? And it's never going to work and all that stuff. So I was like, okay, I have to force myself to do this. So, one of the things I started doing is like, I would write 3 things I'm grateful for every morning. And I've done this like since 2016. And I've never missed a single day. And it's become like a huge habit. And again, I think like really, it's like a really important core of like how to shift like the mindset. And yeah, so it's that. I think the success habit is, my mantra is like 1 to 2 things a year. Like this year, for example, like drinking a lot of coffee in the morning, and it wasn't like really being conducive, and I was trying to do other things. So to stay hydrated and stuff, I added, drink lemon water in the morning. That's all I have to do, And so I think that like that's to have my coffee, or the cold showers, and like all these small things, but over like 7, 8, 9, 10 years, it's actually a lot of things that you have to do in a day. So again, like that's what's worked for me. And I always kind of remember this quote is like, nature doesn't hurry, yet it accomplishes everything. It's
I love the lightness of that. Just 1 to 2 habits a year. And I remember once you showed me on your phone a log. Was that the gratitude? It just went on and on.
Yeah. It's and it was like, I try to make it as simple as possible, like in notes in my phone. Never had an excuse not to do it.
Impressive.
And it's like, so that's important.
Cool. What's your favorite book, Mohammed?
My favorite book is actually Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it, but
what is it called?
Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Nice.
It's a short, like small, like book, and
okay, we will add that to our reading list. And what about your own day-to-day? How do you like to slow down? How do you like to practice stillness?
I think for me, like the biggest thing is like hiking or access to nature. Spending time in nature is like my big thing. It's definitely like slows me down like nothing else.
Yeah, I think I miss that the most in Hong Kong. All the hikes and honestly, take advantage of it for the both of us. It's just so, in Copenhagen, everything is pretty flat. There's no hiking,
but like even just getting like within 10 minutes you can be in complete, like you can be in the city, and then 10 minutes later you can be just in the jungle, like taking a hike. I think that's yeah, hiking, nature is definitely my thing.
Yeah, totally. And finally, the last question is, if we were to quote you, what would your gem of wisdom be today?
I'd say stay curious, keep it simple,
Right?
and enjoy the journey.
Enjoy the journey. That's a good one because there's always so much focus on the destination and just getting there. But it's like this is all we have right now.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Very powerful and a lot of good takeaways here. I'll have to quote you in different ways across our communication channels. But I would love to open the floor now to have some questions. So as usual, the mic is yours, guys. Feel free to just open your mic and ask what you have in mind. And don't be shy. Opie, please.
Hi. So I have a question, Mar. So I'm in my 8th year of business now, and only recently I've overcome a limiting belief that you need to struggle to be successful. Requires a lot of hard work, a lot of grafting. So I'd like to know what limiting beliefs you've overcome in your years of business, if any.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. I mean, definitely like had a similar one, right? That to find these investments, like you'd have to work so hard and dig and do all this extra work. And sometimes like you forget that the simplest like thesis and idea is probably the best one. And I think like trying to add complexity where it's not needed, and not realizing, what is it that I'm trying to do? Do I want to be smart and right, or do I just want to make the business work and grow and provide the service to people? Like I think that's kind of like a something that's important for me over the years to kind of have figure out like what is important to me. So that like belief, I guess in a similar way, I've gone through it. But I think like another one is just I have to do it all myself. I think like that's a big one, especially if you start a business yourself. Like it's really a weird like combination, and yeah, team. Like I said, I can run myself. Maybe I run fast, but I won't run far.
Amazing. Yeah, I feel the same with what you just mentioned there about having to do things myself. I think I just thought it'd be faster if I did it. And only like this year, Farah knows I expanded my team and it's been life-changing. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think because like, I'm trying to also think about like, what's the highest return on my time? And, if you want to maximize that, like you'll just, you just realize like, there's just not enough, like, it's just not possible. It's just not possible. And I really don't know of like any amazing business where it's just like one person like the whole time. It's just like, I think very difficult for that to happen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Opie. Such a good question. And so many entrepreneurs think about those as well, that they have to struggle and suffer to make things happen, and getting out of their own way is half the challenge. So thank you for that question.
I kind of had maybe a follow-up question sort of regarding team and expanding and growing. And so I've been growing my team over the past 2 years for my business. And, this is the first for me. When I worked at a job, I was never a manager. So it's been a learning journey for sure. And I read this book, Radical Candor, by a manager who used to work for Google and other startups and stuff in Silicon Valley. And it's really interesting in talking about like feedback and stuff like that. And I've been trying to like implement more honest feedback. I have a tendency to like not give critical feedback, but just like be positive and like redo the work myself if I'm not happy with it. And so that's been something that I've been trying to like not do anymore. So my question is like, how do you balance maybe keeping high expectations in your business and high standards, like you expect a high level of work, but also bringing a human element to it, that your team members are also humans with, and like you don't want to make them sort of feel discouraged or like criticized, but you want to keep that sort of high expectation. You don't want to do it all yourself, to your previous point.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think it's, yeah, I think it's definitely like challenging, because what you're talking about is how do you kind of create a culture around like your vision, right? Like, how do you get people to do the things that you want them to do when you're not looking into the standard? Like, so I think, so I think it's a challenge, but I think it starts with, at least in terms of hiring and you know, team members. I guess the advice that I've always been given is like, you want to fire fast and hire slow, not the other way around. Like, I think most people, they you know, hire the first person that they like, and then they like very slow to like let them go. And it's actually should be the reverse. So I think like that helps filter in the people from the beginning, right? So I think like if I don't know if that's what you're doing or not, but so once they're kind of part of that, you know, culture, you know, you shouldn't be like redoing the work, right? But I think some of the things that could help is, you know, being very clear on like the deliverable and like what it should look like. So maybe, you know, you have to spend more time in the beginning creating that guideline and that checklist and like, okay, this is really what I kind of want it to look like. And then, you know, making sure that, you know, it's like clear to them what they need to do. So I think like clarity, you know, clarity and deliverable, like it can be like really important. That sometimes people just don't know what like, because your standard, right, is very different. Their definition might be different, but if you define it, I think it helps like make it clearer. I don't know
Yeah,
if that
sure.
answers your question, but
Yeah, no, it's very relatable because I also was freelancing before I kind of was full-time in my business, and that would happen a lot, that I felt like I didn't have clear enough sort of guidelines, expectations, and then to start the work, and then there were maybe corrections later that I was like, oh, well, I wish I knew that that's what you wanted before and all
yeah.
that stuff. So yeah, it makes sense.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Anyone else have any questions? All right. So, Mohammed, usually when we, before we log off, we do two things in our Slow Mastermind. One is that we take a selfie, and two is that we do a deep breath together. And that way everyone gets off the call just feeling light and airy. Are you down to join us in that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, a selfie is in like take out my phone and
No, I'm gonna count to three and see if everyone take a selfie.
yeah.
Amazing. Are you guys up for it? I know Anna and Babna and ZA, they're incognito unless they come on, but let's see. Give them a 5 second countdown. 5, 4. All right, we've got Anna. 3, Babna, ZA, are you making a comeback? 2. All right, they're incognito today. So I'll count to 3. We take a selfie. So 1, 2, 3. Amazing. So, and now let's do our deep breaths. So I just invite you all to close your eyes and I will just briefly guide you here. So just shake off the day and just sit comfortably. And on my count, get ready to take the most rejuvenating breath you've taken today. So take a deep breath in and then hold it at the top for a few moments, maybe even take in more air and just feel it. And then let it out at your own pace. And when you're ready, open your eyes. Amazing. Always feels so good. But Mohammed, thank you so much for being with us in this space. It's been such a good talk, really powerful. and with a good, just really powerful, yeah, lots of gems of wisdom dotted all across. So thank you for sharing your time with us as you're traveling, and we look forward to welcoming you back into our space sometime soon.
Yeah, I appreciate. Thank you all for having me and taking time out of your day to listen. I'm sure I can learn a lot more from you guys as well. So hopefully next time I'll join in on some of these other future sessions.
No, amazing. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day, everyone, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.